Hello. Continuing the biblical summary um, series. This is the first lesson on vegetables. Was what does vegetables? The vegetables of the scriptures. Meaning, what what's the taste of vegetables? Bitter. Vegetables are bitter naturally. We just got done with fruit, and I told you fruit means sweet, the sweet things of the scriptures, the blessings, the promises that God has for his people. But now we get into the Bible is a balanced book. That's what you'll learn from the series is that the Bible is a balanced book with curses and blessings. And right now we get into the bitter things or the curses of the Bible or the threats, the warnings, the threats, the curses, the woes, the tribulations, the destructions, the destructions. That's what the bitter part of the scripture means. You know what I'm saying? The harsh truths. You know what I'm saying? The harsh reality of things. You know what I'm saying? Things that you wish wasn't that way, but it is what it is. You know, the punishments. You know what I'm saying? The so-called punishments. So, which is bitter to us because we all sinners. I'm a sinner. You know what I'm saying? I'm not a perfect man, and I'm sure you're not a perfect man either. So when God makes declaration that He's gonna punish sinners, we all gotta be weary because we all are sinners. So therefore, we all is guilty, man. We all this can happen to us. You know, it all depends on if God had mercy upon you or not. So let's get into the topic today. The first topic of vegetables or bitterness is the bitter truth that Israel was forced out of their land to serve their enemies by the Most High. Meaning, you so called blacks, Latinos, Native Americans, and those Israelites scattered abroad amongst the nations across the whole earth. The reason why you're not in your homeland, which is Israel, Jerusalem, Israel, the land of Israel. The reason why you're not over there right now, the reason why you over in other places like the Americas and the Caribbeans, you know, the reason why that is because the Lord kicked our ancestors out of the land and forced them to serve their enemies. And the reason why is because they did not please God. They did against God's commandments. They broke God's commandments. They served other gods, small g idols. Really, not those things. Really ain't gods. They really just idols. You know what I'm saying? And just because they wicked behavior, God kicked them out. Kicked them out, man. Just like when Adam and Eve disobeyed in the Garden of Eden, God kicked them out of the Garden of Eden. It's the same pattern. Okay, so let's go into some scriptures to prove what I'm saying is true. Go to Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 47. And what you're going to learn about Deuteronomy chapter 28 is that starting with verse 16, they go into the curses. So Deuteronomy in chapter 28 and starting with 16, you can read, and it's basically all the curses that will happen to Israel for not obeying God's word. And it gives you an idea why people is in the predicament they in right now. But let's go for today's studies. Say go to Deuteronomy 28, chapter 28, verse 47 for the lesson. I'll bring it up on my phone too. Okay. Deuteronomy 28, 47. Hold on. The King James Version. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 47. And it reads, because thou servest not the Lord thy God with joyfulness and with gladness of heart for the abundance of all things. Therefore shalt thou serve thy enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee, in hunger, and in thirst, and in nakedness, and in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. That's plain. God promised that he would send heathen nations upon Israel for their disobedience, for not serving him with joy and abundance and gladness of all things. By not obeying him, he promised that he would send these heathen nations that's not part of the promises to punish you. All other heathens out there that hate you and that's jealous of you. You know, he promised if you didn't obey him, that's what he would do, and that's what he did. That's why we over here in America right now, because God sent Esau on so-called Negroes to put them in slavery. You know what I'm saying? With a white man enslaving Negroes, the white man taking so-called Native Americans, which is the tribe of Gad, or the 12 tribes of Israel, taking they so-called land, doing what he did, the white man did, in South America, in the Caribbean islands, and all that, enslaving so-called West Indians, Benjamin and so-called Haitians, putting them into slavery, which is the tribe of Levi. All of that was God's plan against Israel for their disobedience. Man. All of that, God was with the white man doing that because he was angry at our people. Man. You know what I'm saying? For disobe- disobeying him. You know what I'm saying? So he used them as a punishment tool against us. Man. That's the truth. All right, go to verse 36 in Deuteronomy 28. Deuteronomy 28 and 36. Verse 36 of Deuteronomy chapter 28. The Lord shall bring thee and thy king which thou shalt set over thee unto a nation which neither thou nor thy fathers have known. And there shalt thou serve other gods, wood and stone. Right. That's why this started off with Israel being ran out by the Romans in 70 A.D. from the Roman general Titus, and under the rulership of Emperor Vespasian, you know what I'm saying, which was his father. Vespasian, Emperor Vespasian, was the father of Titus and Domitian. And Titus in 70 AD invaded under the orders of Vespasian. He invaded Jerusalem in 70 AD, you know what I'm saying, which made the Israelites flee to Africa for safety from the Romans, to not get killed by the Romans, to not get destroyed by the Romans, you know what I'm saying? To not get enslaved by the Romans, you know what I'm saying? Basically, to not getting fucked over by the Romans. They ran into the Africa, you know what I'm saying, the Israelites. This was Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, because the other Latino and Native American tribes, they was already in America by that time. Which that's another that's some other that's a story for another time. That's other history. But anyway, so they ran into Africa. So there they was in an unknown land right there, in Hamite land in Africa, away from their homeland Jerusalem. And then once they was in Africa, after a time, then the white man came and got them out of Africa, and that was all the Most High's will. You know, so when they was in Africa, over a process of time, they started picking up the other philosophies and the other philosophies and worshiping the other gods or idols of the other nations, which is why you got a lot of our people that think they so-called Africans. They even call so-called blacks in America African Americans. But blacks and Americans are not from Africa, do not originate from Africa. They originate from Jerusalem, from Israel, from the land of Israel. They Israelites. They're not so-called Africans. So-called Africans is heathens known as Hamites. They come out of Ham. You know what I'm saying? The only reason why so-called African Americans, which was originally Israelites, was in Africa because, like I said, in 70 A.D. They fled into Africa to escape Roman persecution. Roman persecution. That's how they ended up in Africa. And then after a period of time, the white man, basically during the colonial age, uh, the Renaissance, when Esau came back in power after the fall of the Roman Empire, basically the colonial age, when you had the so-called European colonial powers, which was Roman states, but now they was separate from each other. You know, you had France, you had Spain, you had Great Britain, and they was going around, and because Europe is known as the bottomless pit because it doesn't have any gold or silver or really uh, mineral resources. So that's why the so-called white man had to go to Africa and around the world to the Americas. He came to the Americas, the Caribbeans, in search of gold and resources because they wanted to become the top power in Europe, basically. You know what I'm saying? That's why they started making so-called colonies to grow their power and influence over the earth to become the most powerful nation in the world, basically. They was all fighting for that. That was the whole purpose of making colonies. So, so they got the slaves from the Hamites They traded with the Hamites. You know what I'm saying? Rum and all that, wine, rum or whatever. They traded with the Hamites, guns and stuff, guns. They traded with them, with the Hamites for slaves. You know what I'm saying? And our people, when we was over there in Africa, we was over there for a little minute before the white man came over there. So that's why we developed and took on the customs of those African tribes, man. That's why you got some niggas think they African in America, and they follow. They all into that Egyptology shit. You know what I'm saying? That Hotep shit. You know what I'm saying? They think that that's our history. They think that's what we should be into when that stuff has nothing to do with us. That's Hamite shit, man. And those people had you in slavery, those Hamites, because they were the original Egyptians. They had you in slavery, man. They, you know what I'm saying? They was persecuting you when you was in Africa, man. They sold you to the white man. Okay? That's what you need to realize. And there shalt thou serve other gods, wood and stone. Right. That's any land that Israel is in that's outside of their home because they don't know who they is. They don't forget they lost children of Israel. They don't lost their identity. They take on the philosophies of these other heathen nations. That's why you got a lot of our people in America, so-called Christians. You know what I'm saying? Following white Jesus when white Jesus is not a real color of Jesus, so-called Jesus. And that's not his real name either. His real name is Yahweh Shai. Ain't no J's in the original Hebrew. You know what I'm saying? So his name can't be Jesus. And he not a Edomite. He not white. He not red. He a black man. It's saying in Revelation that his hands and his feet or whatever, the color of brass, that brass is brown, and then that as if it burnt in the oven. So very dark brown, very dark. You know what I'm saying? Jet black basically. He not no so-called white boy. He's black. You know what I'm saying? You know, that's why you all confused in America. That's why it's called Babylon. America is known as Babylon because there's a lot of babble and confusion. There's so many philosophies out in this world, in this land, man, that we live in. But this is the truth. The Hebrew Israelites, they is telling you the truth, man. You know what I'm saying? Follow the Hebrew Israelites. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Uh, go to 37. Go ahead on 37. Verse 37. Come on. Lost my place. Come on. Bear with me. I lost my place. 37. Verse 37. And thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword among all nations where the Lord shall lead thee. Right. It don't matter where you at in this world. You get no respect. So-called blacks, Latinos, Native Americans, they get no respect no matter what land they is in right now. You know, you got so-called gooks, so-called Asian people. They make fun of you. They do blackface and stuff. You know what I'm saying? Here in America, you got a so-called you got the Jim Crow Museum, and if you look that up, it's on YouTube. Go look that video up about the Jim Crow Museum, full of mockery, man, of blacks. You know what I'm saying? Sambo. You know what I'm saying? Uncle Tom and Gator babies. You know what I'm saying? All type of racist imagery and mockery, blackface. You know what I'm saying? Look that video up. Jim Crow Museum on YouTube. It's very telling. It's a museum basically. They show you all the little racist artwork over the time that Esau has made here in America. You know what I'm saying? That's why you're known as a nigger. You know, a nigger, a slave in the world, man. You got a poor reputation in the world. You know what I'm saying? A thug, a nigger, a wetback, a spook. You know what I'm saying? You a joke in the world, basically. That's what it's saying, man. And that's true. Right now, Israel is a joke in the world, man. Nobody take Israel serious. Nobody respect Israel right now, and that's all due to God's curses, man. You know, all of this stuff has been orchestrated by the Most High. The heathen just have did his bidding, basically. And he did this all to punish you for you know what I'm saying, for not giving him the respect and honor that he deserved, basically, as your creator and as your beneficiator. You know what I'm saying? The one that gave you everything, gave you this world, made this world for your sake, promised you prestige and elevation over the other nations of people out here. You has chosen and all this, man, and you didn't appreciate it. Our people, we didn't appreciate it because we went against God, man. You know what I'm saying? We went against His commandments. We betrayed Him. You know what I'm saying? So that's why He did this to us. You know what I'm saying? Okay, so go to we're still in Deuteronomy 28. Go to verse 49. Verse 49. Okay, more proof that Esau, the so-called white man, him bringing you here in slavery was is God's will. Listen to this. The Lord, this is Deuteronomy 28, verse 49. The Lord shall bring a nation against thee from far, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flieth. The eagle flieth. That's a sign. Who is the eagle? Esau. Look in the back of your quarter. You see a eagle. Look on your currency. Look on your money. Okay, you got the eagle. You know what I'm saying? That's. In fact, let me get a dollar real quick. Well, no, just pull out a dollar in your pocket. Look at the currency. Matter of fact, pull out a dollar right now. I want you to do that. If you're watching this, pull out a dollar, pull out a quarter, pull out some quarters, because these next scriptures gonna show you you'll be able to tie it in to what I'm teaching. So yeah, that's Esau's sign. It's the eagle. You know what I'm saying? A nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. Right, when you was over there in Africa, you know what I'm saying, you didn't when Esau came speaking English, you didn't understand what he was saying, man. When he had you on those slave ships, you know what I'm saying, when he had them chains, you didn't understand his language. A nation of fierce continents. And they was totally merciless against you, man. They didn't have no mercy for you. They was fierce against you. They didn't have no mercy towards you. They had a fierce countenance against you, a fierce face, basically, a face of no mercy, basically, no pity. And they say it right this, which shall not regard the person of an old. Right? They didn't care. They didn't release the slaves if he got a certain age. They didn't say, "Oh, he old man. He an old man." He an old man. He done served slavery. He done been a slave for 50, 60 years, man. He an old man now. Let him go. Let him have his freedom. No, they kept you as a slave until you died, man. Until you died, you was a slave, man. They didn't care if you was old. What's your favor to the young? They didn't care about your babies either. They sold your babies off. They didn't care if they was babies, that they was separating them from their mamas and daddies. They still sold those babies as slave babies. They still used those babies as alligator bait because they was a fierce nation, a fierce continent, meaning no mercy, no pity for you. You know what I'm saying? No softness, no mercy towards you. You know what I'm saying? Um, and he shall eat the fruit of thy cattle and of thy land until thou be destroyed, which shall not neither leave thee either corn, wine, or oil, or the increase of kine or flocks of thy sheep, until he have destroyed thee. Right. Well, that's what he did to the Native Americans. He totally took their land and stripped them bare, man. Gada had all these land. He had the buffaloes and stuff, and he had all this land that was his basically, that he could roam freely. And Esau took all that, man, and killed off the buffalo there so he couldn't hunt and stuff. That's all in history, man. Okay, Esau is the main motherfucker right now. You should know that. The so-called white man. You the last of the heathens that we got to deal with before the kingdom comes. You know what I'm saying? So go to Deuteronomy 28 and 66, and this will wrap it up. Deuteronomy 28 and 66. This will prove why you here in America. And remember, I told you to have that dollar bill and all that, and the coins, so you can see this, understand the scripture better. Okay. Deuteronomy 28:68, the last verse of Deuteronomy 28. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. Notice it said with ships. Originally, when you was in Jerusalem, you didn't need no ships to get to Egypt. It was right next door. Egypt and Israel is right next door to each other. You know, they right there. You don't need ships. But what that means is Egypt, spiritually Egypt. Because Egypt was where the Israelites was enslaved and going through hard bondage. Remember this whole story about Moses, let my people go? Okay, that's when you dudes that's worshiping these so-called Egyptian gods and all this. Those Egyptian gods, so-called gods, wasn't helping you when you was in Egypt getting your back whooped by Hamites, by taskmasters, building the pyramids. You know what I'm saying? They had you in slavery. The original Egyptians is what you would call the people of Sudan now. Sudanese. They known for they height, black as hell and tall, man. That's the so-called Sudanese. They was the original Egyptians. You know, you got a basketball player called Manute Bol. He come from Sudan. That's how those Egyptians look, man, like that. That's the phenotype they had, tall and real black. You know what I'm saying? And they had you in slavery, man. They had you in hard bondage where Moses had to deliver Moses through God. You know what I'm saying? God working through Moses, he delivered you from the Egyptians. You know what I'm saying? So that's what it means. This place is modern day Egypt. Because this place was the place of slavery too. You know what I'm saying? And look on your money. Look on your money. You'll see pyramids. You know what I'm saying? The all seeing eye and all that. Because uh, this place is based on Egypt. This place is based on Babylon. This place is based on Rome. You know what I'm saying? That's why it's got Roman architecture. You know, look at Las Vegas. You got the pyramids. You know what I'm saying? This so-called white man, at least they worship ancient Babylonian and ancient Egyptian so-called gods and stuff. You know what I'm saying? That's what they do, man. You know what I'm saying? And they make architecture based on Egypt and based on those uh, heathenistic gods and stuff. You know what I'm saying? So, so what it's saying is, let me read it again. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. That's how you got here in America, which is spiritually Egypt. Ships, slave ships. By the way whereof I speak unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. And there you shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, slave men and slave women, and no man shall buy you. And then what that means, and no man shall buy you, that's a mistake. That means that should be, and no man shall redeem you out of the slavery. Because it just told you, and there you shall be sold. If you sold, somebody bought you. You know what I'm saying? Unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen. And no man shall buy you, meaning no man shall redeem you out of the slavery. No man gonna redeem you. No man gonna come when you. No man came for those slaves when they were slaves. No man came and said, "Here's this money. Give me my brother. I'll give you $2,000 for that slave." He's not gonna be a slave anymore. You know what I'm saying? No, nobody did that for you. Nobody did that for those people, those slaves, our ancestors. When they came over to America, they was bought and sold as slaves, and that's what the purpose that they served until they died or until they perished, a slave, until they escaped or perished or died or whatever. They was a slave. You know what I'm saying? So that's what that means now. Um, so that's the end of this lesson for today, and I hope you learned something. Goodbye.